Good morning. It's good to be with you on this wonderful Wednesday. I'm glad to be back from my school last week because that means I get to teach Bible study tonight at St. Matthew's. I love Bible study. I hate not being here for Wednesday nights like I was last week. So it's good to be back with us. I'm looking forward to our rooted this morning, but I'm really looking forward to Wednesday Night Live here at St. Matthew's. So if you're in the Madison area, looking for a great place for fellowship, a good meal, good activities for adults and youth and children. We'd love to have you with us at St. Matthew's tonight for Wednesday Night Live. It's a great time together. And I'm glad to be back teaching Bible study. I just love Bible study. I mentioned yesterday, we're going to be looking at one of the more well-known stories in John's Gospel, the story of the Samaritan woman at the well. And it's a long story. Um, it makes up the vast majority of John 4. So it's 42 verses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this up into three sections that we'll look at throughout the rest of this week. We're going to read today the introduction part, which is 1 through 15. Then tomorrow we will read their main conversation, which is 16 through 26. And then we'll finish Friday with 27 through 42, the rest of the chapter. So let's read verses 1 through 15 this morning. First, the Gospel of John, chapter 4, 1 through 15. Now, Jesus learned the Pharisees had heard Jesus is making and baptizing more disciples than John, although it was not Jesus himself, but his disciples who baptized. He left Judea and started back to Galilee, but he had to go through Samaria. So he came to Samaria, a Samaritan city called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired out by his journey, was sitting by the well. It was about noon. A woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." His disciples had gone to the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask of me, a woman of Samaria, ask a drink of me, a woman of Samaria? Jews do not share things in common with Samaritans." Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is who is saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, he would have given you living water." The woman said, "Sir, you have no bucket, and the well is deep. Where do you get that living water? Are you greater than our ancestor Jacob, who gave us the well with his sons and his flocks and drank from it?" Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but those who drink the water that I will give them will never be thirsty. The water that I give will become in them a spring of water gushing up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I may never be thirsty or have to keep coming here to draw water." Okay, so we see this story. We notice we don't see the part about him telling her to go get her husband. We're going to unpack that tomorrow. That's tomorrow's day. Don't as my teachers last week kept saying, don't get ahead of yourself. But let's just stay with what we have, because sometimes we want to read a text and jump to the good part, if you will, without doing the work that is necessary to understand it. So let's talk about Samaria. By the way, one of the cool things, I've actually been here. I've been to this well. I've been to this Samaria is east of Jerusalem, going towards Jericho. It's in the West Bank. I've been to this literal well before. It's in the basement of a church there. I've drank water from this well. So that's one of the things in Israel when you go to different sites, you we can typically trust the sites with water as the feature, particularly wells, because the thing about a spring is that it doesn't move. So we feel pretty confident that this well that is at the bottom in this basement of this church is the actual well in this story. But notice it says here, Jesus was learned the Pharisees were talking about him. So he left Judea and went to Galilee. So in other words, he left the southern part of Israel to go to the northern part, Galilee, where his base of operations is from. And it says he had to go through Samaria. Okay. No, he didn't. He didn't have to go to Samaria through Samaria. Most Jews didn't. Um, this is not a if I'm going to leave St. Matthew's to go to my house, I've got to go north. So there aren't many ways to get to my house without going down Hoy Road at some point. You can do it, but it's easier to go Hoy Road. Jesus didn't have to go to Samaria. There were other ways to get to Galilee from Jerusalem. In fact, it's very common because, as we see here, verse 8, verse 9 rather, the Jews do not share things in common with the Samaritans. Um, Jews would avoid Samaria. And in fact, when we get in the next day or so to reading about the disciples coming back, they're stunned. Jesus is talking to a Samaritan. In fact, she says to him in verse 9, how is that you, a Jew, ask a drink of me, a woman of Samaria? For Jews do not share things in common with Samaritans. So Jesus did not have to go through Samaria to get to Galilee, did not. But he had to go through Samaria for a bigger spiritual purpose. So this is a divine appointment. There is chronos time, that's chronology, that's your watch, that is earthly time and plans. Then there's kairos. Kairos is divine time, God's time. Jesus did not have to go through Samaria for the direct route to his trip, but he had to go through Samaria for God's purpose. Are you living today more for your purpose than God's purpose? Are you living on chronos time, which is I've got a meeting in 26 minutes? Or are we living in kairos time, which is paying attention to the movement in the Spirit of God? So Jesus goes to Samaria because he has a divine appointment with this woman. Now, we will see tomorrow the theological differences between the Jews and the Samaritans, but the Jews and Samaritans did not play well together. The Jews did not like the Samaritans did not like the Jews. That's why the parable of the Good Samaritan is so shocking to the Jewish listeners of Jesus, because they could not imagine a world where there was a good Samaritan. That simply wasn't in their mindset. The Samaritans were unclean. They were heretics. They worshiped wrong. We'll talk about that some tomorrow, about their worship style. The Samaritans were outside the scope of who was faithful to the Jewish practices. They were unclean. They were impure. They worshiped wrong. They believed wrong. They were the worst. That's why the Jews avoided them. That's why the Jews avoided them, because they didn't want anything to do with them. A good Jew would not want anything to do with Samaritan because they were heretics. They believed, taught, worshiped wrong, were wrong. So the good Jew would avoid them. They were almost obligated to. Who do you as a good Christian avoid today? Who are the people, the groups that the expectation is that you as a Christian must avoid them in the same way that the expectations were that Jesus as a Jew must avoid the Samaritans? And sometimes when we live, I think that's how we slip into chronos time instead of kairos time. When we spend our life and we spend our agenda and we spend our efforts and we spend our stuff living and loving and reaching out to and caring for the people that I'm expected to. And then we're just going down the script, checking things off the list. But whenever we are willing to step off our predetermined to-do list and our predetermined schedule and go to the places that God tells us to go, love and take the good news of Jesus to people that need to hear it that we might not ordinarily talk to. Spend time with the person that in our work and in our job that we may not ordinarily do. To your students, who are the groups in your classes that aren't normally reached out to? Listen, we adults are the same as our children. Somebody in the HOA that everybody talks about. You do. Love them. You have a cousin that gets on your nerves. Love them. The folk who are hard to love, when we're living on chronos time and chronos schedule, we're not going to spend time with them. We're not going to love them. The folk who are hard to love, when we spend time on God's kairos time, then we are like Jesus and taking the gospel where it needs to be heard. Because here's the thing, y'all, there was some time in my life when I was the one that people didn't want to love. And I'm sure it's the same for you. But somebody took time to share the good news of Jesus with you. Someone spent time loving you, being with you, caring for you, showing you Jesus. And that made the difference in your life. So today, who is that person? Today, who is our Samaria? Who do we need to go to? Who do we need to take the love of Jesus to? Who needs to hear the love of God from our lips today? So that's where Jesus does. He goes to Samaria today. Tomorrow we'll unpack the conversation he has with the woman at the well. So, look forward to doing that with you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you in the morning. Thanks.